Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started by just officially welcoming all of you guys. Sawadee Kap, welcome to Wat Tung. Welcome. This is a great day to be here for class because we're going to be studying the very beginning of the teachings of the Buddha, which is called the Four Noble Truths. This is where you're going to learn the problem in the unenlightened mind, the cause of that problem, the elimination of it, and the path forward. This is part of chapter 12 of this book series that we share for this particular program, which is called the Group Learning Program. We meet each Sunday and Wednesday, and we use the volume 1 as our guide for this particular course. And in chapter 12, it's titled Craving is the Problem, What is the Solution? And part of understanding that is to understand the very first teaching of the Buddha. Even though this has been taught at different times during this program, this is a time where I refresh people's memory who's learned this particular chapter before. But if you're new to the teachings of the Buddha, or you haven't studied the Four Noble Truths before, this is a great time to be here to be able to learn the teachings of the Buddha. Because this path that the Buddha taught, it's going to lead you to this enlightened mind where you no longer experience any discontent feelings. All the sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. You no longer experience even a bad mood by the time you get to enlightenment. So today's class, after we do meditation together, then I will share with you these teachings from the Buddha that will help you to be able to see clearly what's actually causing these discontent feelings. And the way that the teachings of the Buddha work is that you don't believe any of his teachings. You learn them, you reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them in order to train your mind. So as I teach you today, you'll be able to independently verify what I'm teaching you is the truth through your own direct experience. And I'll show you how to do that as we get started. So I'm going to be guiding you in meditation to help us start our class and help you train your mind a bit. The way that I start with meditation is I start with a chant to ease us into meditation. And if you'd like to join along in the chants, I have them on a laminated sheet over there on the table. You can get those sheets. They're in the Pali language, and you can chant along if you like. Even if you've never chanted before, you'll be able to see the chants there in the Pali language. And then you'll see the English translations as well. And what you'll see is that these chants have a lot of admiration and a lot of respect and a lot of gratitude for the Buddha. I suspect that he didn't actually create these chants, but probably his students during his lifetime or after his death might have created these chants as a way to honor and respect him for sharing the teachings that lead to this enlightened mind. So if you had a teacher that helped you go from the anger and sadness and frustration and all these other discontent feelings to this peace and joy that is the enlightened mind, you would have a lot of gratitude or respect for that individual too. So the Buddha didn't expect anything from anybody. He didn't want anything from anybody. He just helped you learn what it took for him to be able to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. He wasn't giving you rules to follow. He wasn't teaching commandments. He wasn't even trying to convince you to do anything. He wasn't using guilt or shame or fear to try to convince you to do anything. Instead, he was just sharing throughout his life what it took for him to get to that enlightened mental state. And then if you choose and you have an interest to eliminate the anger, the sadness, the frustration, and all those other discontent feelings, then you can learn, you can reflect to independently verify, and you can practice, and you can see the truth for yourself that his teachings actually work to train the mind to get to that peaceful and joyful mental state. So meditation is part of that, and we chant in order to ease into the meditation. This isn't a rite or ritual or ceremony or worship. You're not even praying. That's not what the chants are for. There's nothing mystical or magical about the chants. It's helping to invigorate the mind, helping to bring some attentiveness and alertness to the mind, helping you become aware of the mind and aware of the breath, which are benefits that you need once you get into meditation. You're going to need to have awareness of the mind and awareness of the breath. So it actually helps you to get more benefit out of the meditation itself to be able to chant before meditation. Then once we get into the meditation, I will do some guidance to help you to understand how to do this meditation. And then there'll be a period of time where we'll just be meditating together. Those of us here at the temple, and there's people joining us online through our live stream, so I'd like to welcome all of you guys as well. They will all be meditating together. We'll all be doing the meditation for a period of time. I won't be talking. I won't be guiding you. You'll just be doing the work to actually meditate. Then after we meditate, I'll come out of that with some chanting, which once again, you're welcome to join in with if you like. If you are interested in sitting to do the meditation, there's 4 different positions that the Buddha taught: seated, lying, standing, and walking. And I taught these last week as part of our class. Most people will learn in the seated position, either on the floor or in a chair. These are all options for you. It's about sitting where you're comfortable. It's not about everybody being in exactly the same position. It's not possible for everyone to be in exactly the same position because our bodies are all different. We're going to find different things that are comfortable. So if you're on the floor, you might have some cushions under your rear. That helps to get the hips up in the air and lessens the angle at the hips, the knees, and the ankles. Some people like to have multiple cushions. Some people even like to put their legs off the edge of the mat, which accomplishes the same thing, getting the hips up in the air. So you'd like your legs to just be lightly crossed. And if you're in a chair, some people like to put their feet flat on the floor or lightly crossed at the ankles. Essentially, your lower body should be nice and comfortable. The hands and arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this in his lap. And if this is comfortable for you, you could use it. But again, this isn't about everybody doing it exactly the same way. Some people like other options, like putting your palms on your thighs or your knees or your palms up, whatever's comfortable for you. Your lower body and hands and arms should be relaxed and comfortable, not luxurious and not painful, but comfortable. That's the middle. Then your upper body, this should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation, whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be kind of dull and lethargic and complacent. But if you were real rigid, the mind could have a tendency to be overactive or uptight. So you would like the upper body to be in the middle where it's erect, so you can maintain some alertness and some attentiveness to the mind. So once again, I'm going to ease us into meditation with some chanting, and then you're welcome to join along, and we'll provide some guidance at the end of chanting. So make yourself comfortable, and then we'll do meditation together. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Wat Tung Mahakewanang Apivateyami Sawakhato Mahakewata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakewato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakewa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakhato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma สติสตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, experiencing the full breath, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, the present moment, whenever you notice that the mind moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Just whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรภูริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวะมนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you'd like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I would just once again welcome all of you guys, including those of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to you guys that are here at the temple, and those of you guys that are joining us online. Welcome to everyone. If this is your first time here, I'd like to just help you to understand that there's a bathroom in the back of the room. If you would like to use the restroom at any time, feel free to go use the restroom. And there's even one outside the classroom. If you walk outside, you'll see the main signs for the temple bathrooms guiding you to the bathrooms. And we even have water here. If you guys would like to have some water, you're welcome to help yourself. This is provided by the students to offer to other students. So you're welcome to enjoy the water, make yourself comfortable. As we go in today's talk, I'll be sharing teachings with you from the Buddha that are going to help you to understand the path to enlightenment. And today we're going to be talking about his very first teaching of the Four Noble Truths. And as we go, I'll open up to questions, having you guys providing you guys the opportunity to ask any and all questions that you like. If you're here at the temple, you can ask questions by using the microphones here in the white bowl. This way the people online will be able to hear you. There's a switch on the microphone. If you just press the gray switch, you'll see the lights come on, and then you'll be able to ask a question. So feel free to help yourself to the microphones and pass them around as you need those. Those of you guys that are online, if you'd like to ask questions, you can put those into the comment section of Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Zoom. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions you like directly, and we'll hear you here at the temple on the speakers. So again, welcome to all of you guys, and pleased to see that you guys are here and that you're interested in learning the teachings of the Buddha. This path to enlightenment that the Buddha taught, there's nothing on this path that is to be believed. You don't believe, and then hope something good happens when you die. That's not the way that the teachings of the Buddha work. Instead, what you do is you learn his teachings, you reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them. And this is where you transform the mind and you start experiencing more and more the qualities of the enlightened mind. You can't believe your way to enlightenment. You can't even meditate your way to enlightenment. You need meditation in order to get to enlightenment, but you wouldn't be able to just meditate your way. You need to learn other teachings. One of the biggest myths about the life of the Buddha is some people think he sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. But this isn't actually true. If you learn his teachings and you see his original words, he talks about how it's not an instantaneous thing to get to enlightenment. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. It took him 6 years to get to enlightenment. And you can independently verify this for yourself because everything you've ever done has been gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Whether it's learning to speak English, we all gradually learned that. We gradually practiced and we experienced gradual progress. Whether it's some job or occupation that you might have, some skill, you've gradually learned that, you've gradually practiced, and you've gradually progressed in your career perhaps. So everything that we experience is this gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress, including the path to enlightenment. The unenlightened mind is oftentimes struggling and having challenges in the world, experiencing sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, certain displeasures or uncomfortableness, dissatisfaction in the mind. The path to enlightenment is to eliminate all of that, completely eliminate it from the mind so that you no longer experience that. You can get to the peace, the calm, the serenity, and the contentedness with joy that is the enlightened mind. You can experience focus, concentration, clarity, deep memory. You can experience where your personal, professional relationships blossom. You no longer have harshness or bitterness or hostility in your relationships. You can get to the point where you're not even in a bad mood anymore by the time you train your mind. But you don't do this through belief, because with belief, you don't know what's true or false. So as I teach you today, it's important not to believe anything that I say. Don't believe anything that's in the books that I write. Don't believe anything that you ever see me teach or anything else that anybody else teaches, because what you're looking to do is get to wisdom. When we talk about awakening the mind to enlightenment, what you're doing is you're awakening to wisdom. And that's through your independent verification and your practice of teachings that you can ultimately get to wisdom. So we're not believing our way to enlightenment. You can't believe your way to a better existence in this life. What the Buddha actually did is he shared teachings that it took for him to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state. He's helping you to awaken to the natural laws of existence. The natural laws of existence are teachings that he discovered about the natural laws and how the world around you functions. One of the reasons why the unenlightened mind struggles and has difficulties in the world is because it doesn't understand these natural laws. And because the unenlightened mind doesn't understand these natural laws, the mind will tend to experience these struggles and difficulties, which includes the sadness, the anger, the frustration, and all these other discontent feelings that are experienced, the annoyment, the irritation, all these discontent feelings, even stress and anxiety. So when you awaken to the wisdom and you understand the world around you, then you can make wise decisions that produces wholesome results. Because to live in a world that you don't understand, it can be quite a struggle. It can be very difficult. And when you lack wisdom of these natural laws, you will naturally make unwise decisions without even realizing it. You'll think that the decisions you're making are the most wise decisions, but that's the ego in there telling you that you're so great, or you're so wonderful, or so amazing, and it's everyone else that is the problem. One of the things that you're going to learn as part of the teachings that I share with you today is how your mind is causing these discontent feelings itself. Because in the unenlightened state, we tend to blame other people because we don't understand the natural laws of existence and how the mind is actually causing its own anger and its own frustration. So I'm going to teach that to you in a way that you can independently verify and you can practice and see the truth for yourself. So these natural laws that you're awakening through, in order to learn, reflect, and practice these natural laws that you gain wisdom about, you've essentially done exactly the same thing with other natural laws, with maybe not even realizing it. As we all grew up at different times in our life, we didn't understand the natural law of gravity. When we were a child, when we were an infant, when we were a toddler, even in our early childhood, we had a lot of struggles and difficulties with this natural law of gravity. We fell down, we hit our head, we hit our elbow, we busted our knees, we knocked over glasses of water and damaged things. And slowly but surely, we gained wisdom. There was gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress where we gained this wisdom of the natural law of gravity. And as we gained this wisdom, we started making wiser decisions that produced more wholesome results. Because when we lacked wisdom of the natural law of gravity, we struggled, we had difficulties. But slowly but surely, we had the ability to cultivate the wisdom in order to see this natural law of gravity. And then we started making wiser decisions, like tying our shoes tighter, like looking at the surface of the sidewalk, walking more calmly, not being so giddy. So now we're at the point where we can ride bicycles, we maybe ride a motorbike, we climb ladders, we do all these different things. We even get on airplanes and fly all over the world because we understand the natural law of gravity and how it works. We no longer struggle with it anymore. Where when we lacked wisdom of this natural law of gravity, we made unwise decisions without realizing it, and we experienced unwholesome results. But slowly but surely, we gained this wisdom that led to these wholesome results. And that's what you're essentially doing on the path to enlightenment, is you're not believing that the natural law of gravity exists. You can actually see it for yourself. You can have the direct experience and you can see, yep, there it is. There's that natural law of gravity. It's functioning all the time. It's affecting all of us, whether we're aware of it or not. And these natural laws of existence are exactly the same way. They're affecting you whether you're aware of them or not. So the more wisdom that you gain about these natural laws, then you can make wise decisions that produce wholesome results. And with the lack of wisdom, you'll naturally make unwise decisions without realizing it and experiencing these unwholesome results. So I'm going to share with you the teachings of the Buddha, which are the very first teachings that you would learn as you start on the path to enlightenment, in order to start awakening the mind to this wisdom, that you can see the true reality of what's causing these discontent feelings, so that then you can eliminate them. In the Four Noble Truths, you're going to learn about the problem in the unenlightened mind. You're going to learn about the cause of that problem. You're going to learn about the elimination of it and the path forward of how to completely eliminate the discontentedness. You can get to the point where today, having learned the Four Noble Truths, you can have this breakthrough where finally you understand what's causing your anger, your frustration, your stress, your anxiety, the guilt and shame and boredom and fears and all these other discontent feelings. You can finally understand what is actually causing it so that you can eliminate it. Because as long as you don't understand what's causing these feelings, you will continue to experience them. Because if you don't know the cause, then you won't be able to eliminate them. Because in the unenlightened state, what we tend to do is we tend to push people away. When we're experiencing painful feelings, you might attribute those feelings to somebody else. So you might push them out of your life, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But it doesn't, because that's not the cause of the problem. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to people, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But that doesn't solve the problem either. Or you might try to put your expectations on people and try to control them to get them to do things your way. And that doesn't solve the problem either. So once you understand what the problem is, then you understand the cause of that problem, you understand the elimination of it and the path forward, you can actually make real progress in seeing these discontent feelings start to be eliminated as you train your mind. So as I mentioned, as you guys have questions, you're welcome to ask those along the way. And I'm going to help you to understand how to learn something, how to reflect on it, to independently verify it, and then how to practice it so that you don't need to believe anything that I say. And you can independently verify what I'm sharing with you is the truth. So in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to first understand the three universal truths. We call these truths because the Buddha knew that they were truth. I know that they're truth, and other people know that they're truth too. But in order for you to experience the benefits and the results of the path to enlightenment, you need to know that they're truth. And that's why you're directly verifying things. You're learning, you're independently verifying, and you're practicing. And because you're learning now, you're reflecting now and you're practicing now, you see the results now in this life. It's not something that you do now and you don't get the results until you die. You actually see the results now as your mind becomes more peaceful and more joyful in this life. So here's the three universal truths to be able to help you understand these building blocks to then be able to understand the Four Noble Truths. So the three universal truths, the first one is the universal truth of impermanence. This is where you learn that things are constantly changing. Things arise, they change, and they fade away. This is the constant change of all the material objects around you, all the possessions, all the things you see, all the things you hear, smell, taste, things that come in contact with the body, things that you think about in the mind. All these things are what's called a conditioned object. Conditioned objects arise, they change, and then they fade away. This is called the universal truth of impermanence. Now, that's a little bit of learning. It takes me all of 1 or 2 minutes to teach it to you, to help you learn a little bit about it. But now you don't believe that teaching. You start reflecting on it through your own direct experience to try to independently verify it. And one of the ways that you independently verify something is you try to disprove it. Because if I'm sharing with you this is a universal truth, then you should be able to see that it's universally true wherever you are in the world. You should see that things are impermanent, meaning temporary, subject to change. They arise, change, and fade away. They aren't permanent. So now you take something that you're very familiar with and you start reflecting on it. Something like the human body. You're very familiar with this body. Is this body permanent or impermanent? If it's permanent, that means this body has been exactly the same your whole life and it's never changed. If it's impermanent, that means it's constantly changing. So what would you say? Is the body permanent or impermanent? Impermanent? What would you guys say? It's impermanent, right? We get taller, we get shorter, we get more fat, we get less fat, we get gray hair, we lose our hair, our teeth grow in, they fall out, they come back in, we get cavities, right? We get hair in different places. Different things are constantly changing with this body. We get pimples, we get moles, we get all these different things. The physical body's constantly changing. What would you say about your relationships? Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? If they're permanent, that means you've had exactly the same people in your life throughout your entire life. If your relationships are impermanent, that means you've had people coming and going in and out of your life throughout your whole life. Are your relationships permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, right? What about your bank account? Is your bank account permanent or impermanent? What's that? Is it permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? Some of us, it goes up and down and up and down. Others, it just goes down, 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 down. Others goes up, 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 right? It just depends, right? Our bank account's impermanent. What about the weather? Is this permanent or impermanent? It's impermanent, right? We could go on and on and on. Your job, is your job permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, right? You had different jobs at different times. Or even if you have the whole job or the same job your whole life, you're going to retire eventually and stop working, right? It's not permanent. Your clothes are impermanent. Your relationships are impermanent. This carpet on the floor is impermanent. The walls of the temple are impermanent. When you're walking down the sidewalk and you see a crack in the sidewalk, this is impermanence. The height of the sidewalk, the color of the sidewalk, the texture, all these things are constantly changing. This is impermanence. Okay, so you can independently verify that. Now, the second universal truth is called discontentedness. This is explaining what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. These are called conditioned feelings. If you've ever studied the teachings of the Buddha in other places, you might have heard the word suffering used here. I won't use that word to describe this universal truth. I'll explain to you why as I explain to you what this universal truth is, but then I'll circle back and help you to understand why I don't use that word. But first, let me explain to you what this universal truth is. In the original teachings of the Buddha, he uses the word dukkha, and that's what explains this particular universal truth. And when he explains this universal truth, he's explaining it as three feelings: pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. I use the word discontent, discontented or discontentedness. Because pleasant feelings are things like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. These are very pleasant for you to experience. Then there's painful feelings like sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear. This is very painful. Stress, anxiety. These are very painful for you to experience. Then there's neither painful nor pleasant. I put boredom and loneliness here, but some people say that's quite painful for them. So you could put that in the painful category. But shyness is a really good example of neither painful nor pleasant. It's not painful. It's not pleasant. It's neither painful nor pleasant. Or if somebody you didn't know came and sat really close to you and your body was touching their body, your mind, it wouldn't be painful. It wouldn't be pleasant. Your mind's kind of like uncomfortable. It's kind of dissatisfied, right? It's feeling that dissatisfaction. So it's not painful. It's not pleasant. So there's these three feelings that the unenlightened mind experiences: pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. And these are what's called conditioned feelings. They're based on some condition. So, for example, in the unenlightened state, you might wake up in the morning and you see it's sunny outside, and you might get happy or you might get excited based on the condition of the sun. But now you go take a shower and you come back and you see that it's raining. And now, because your feeling of happiness was conditioned on the sun, and the sun is impermanent, when the sun changes and now it's raining, your happiness changes as well. It arises, it changes, and it fades away. Now you end up in frustration or irritation or annoyance or some other discontent feeling. So if you get so excited because I get to go out and play and I'm going hiking and I'm going to go see my friends and yeah, we're going to go to the park. If you get so excited and you get this conditioned feeling based on some impermanent condition, that means you're basing your inner feelings on some condition. And now that conditional feeling, when that condition changes, now the mind's going to move to some painful feeling. So this is what the unenlightened mind is doing, is it's going up and down based on certain conditions. If this condition exists, and this condition, and this condition, and this condition, and this condition, then I will be happy. But if those conditions don't fit, if those conditions aren't there, then the mind will be sad or angry or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. These are called conditioned feelings. The mind's going up and down, up and down. At different times, there might be some peacefulness and joy here and there, but nonetheless, it's only a matter of time before you become irritated or frustrated or agitated about something. By the time you get to enlightenment, the mind is beyond all of this. The mind is experiencing unconditioned mental qualities, where your mind is just always peaceful, always happy, always joyful. There doesn't need to be any conditions met, because as I mentioned, in the unenlightened mind, if this condition is met, and this condition is met, and this condition is met, and this condition is met, then I will be happy. If my boyfriend or girlfriend calls me, if my mom calls me, if my bank account is this, if my boss does this, if this occurs, then I will be happy. But if those things don't occur, the mind ends up in these painful feelings. So this is what the unenlightened mind is experiencing: discontentedness, or the mind is discontent, or it's discontented. Again, some people refer to this as suffering. They will translate the word dukkha as suffering. But if you look at the word suffering, it explains the painful feelings really well. The sadness, the anger, the frustration, all of those, you'd probably say, yeah, that feels like suffering. But when you're happy or excited, would you say you're suffering? Probably not. Or if that person you don't know came and sat really close to you and your body was touching their body, would you say you were suffering in that situation? Probably not. The mind's discontent or experiencing discontentedness. So I use this word discontent, discontented, or discontentedness to explain this particular aspect of the teachings of the Buddha. Because if we use the word suffering, we're only understanding 33% of what the Buddha taught. And that means you're missing 66% of what he actually taught. And if you're missing 66% of what a teacher taught, you're not going to have a very easy time to experience the results of the enlightened mind, of what he's explaining to you is the enlightened mind. So here he's explaining to you what the unenlightened mind experiences, that it experiences these discontent feelings, these conditioned feelings. The mind is conditioning its feelings on some object. There's some condition that has to be met. And if those conditions are met, then you will experience these feelings. And these feelings arise, they change, and they fade away. So you can now independently verify this, right? Because I just taught it to you. You've learned it. And now you independently verify it through your reflection. Because you know at this point your mind is unenlightened. So does this describe what you experience? Do you experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant? Is there any feeling that you experience that doesn't fit into one of these three categories? And if you think there's a feeling that doesn't fit into one of these three categories, when I open up the questions, let me know, and then we can talk about it. Because then you'll be able to independently reflect and verify that, yes, the Buddha is explaining what the mind experiences as these three feelings, but you need to be able to independently verify that and see it for yourself, so you're not believing that this is true, but you see it as true, and you know with a fact through wisdom that, yes, you've confirmed this and this is true. Now there's this third universal truth called non-self. I'll explain to you what this is and help you to understand it. Not everybody understands this 100% when they're first learning it. It oftentimes takes multiple conversations to understand it, but let me give you an introduction to it and help you to start to understand it. It's not so important that you understand this in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, but let me introduce it to you here and start to help you understand what this universal truth is. This universal truth is actually the solution to one of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. He discovered 10 individual problems. They're called the 10 fetters. Some people refer to them as taints or pollutions or defilements. What a fetter is like a shackle and a chain with a ball on your leg. This is how they kept prisoners trapped in a certain location. And these 10 pollutions or 10 fetters are keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state, where it keeps experiencing anger and frustration and all those other discontent feelings over and over and over and over again. So what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is you're working to eliminate these 10 fetters from the mind. And when you eliminate this pollution, that's why the mind now experiences that peace, calm, serenity, contentedness with joy. You experience more focus, concentration, clarity of mind, and deep memory, because you don't have this pollution that's plaguing the mind. You experience this brightness and radiance shining through in the mind. You experience the blossoming of your personal, professional relationships. And as I mentioned, you're not even in a bad mood anymore because you've eliminated the pollutions that are causing the mind to experience those things. So there's this one pollution in the mind called personal existence view. And the universal truth of non-self is the solution for this. It helps you to eradicate it. But it takes time to learn this and then reflect on it and practice. So I can help you learn it today. I can help you reflect on it. And then over time, you'll need to practice to be able to uproot this pollution of personal existence view out of the mind. What personal existence view is where the unenlightened mind thinks that this body or this mind is you. The mind has this personal view that this body is you or this mind is you. And this is causing the mind to experience some challenges in life. So there's a certain self-image that the mind is clinging to with the physical body. And the mind thinks that this is you and this is who you are. The mind wants to be perceived in the world a certain way. You might wear certain clothing, certain jewelry, certain things, certain way you maybe want your hair or your makeup or other things like this. The mind is clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are. And now when you experience change or you experience impermanence with this body, the mind doesn't like it. So for example, if you've ever spilt chocolate ice cream or pizza sauce on your clothes and you got embarrassed, this is because of your personal existence view. The mind is thinking that this body is you. You're not being perceived in the world in the way you want to be perceived, and now the mind experiences embarrassment. Or if you've ever looked in the mirror and you saw a wrinkle or a gray hair or a pimple or a mole, this is the personal existence view if you were shaken up by that, or if you experienced annoyment or agitation when you saw these things. So the mind has a certain way that it wants to be perceived in the world. You might have certain jewelry or certain clothing that you want to go out into the world with. And if you don't go out into the world with these things, the mind is uncomfortable. Or you might stand in front of your closet and put on different clothing and trying to get everything exactly perfect before you go out into the world. This is the mind's personal existence view, wanting to be perceived a certain way. If somebody says something agreeable to you about your appearance, they compliment you about your appearance, and you get all these pleasant feelings because of this compliment. But then the only problem is that because of impermanence, that now somebody might say something degrading or disparaging about the way that this body looks, and now you experience the painful feelings of sadness or frustration or irritation, because you can't control everybody to say to you and do things the way you want. So in the world, if you go out into the world clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are, you might hear complimentary things at certain times, but it's only a matter of time due to impermanence that you will hear things that are disparaging or degrading about the physical appearance. I'm not saying it's wise for people to do that. I'm just sharing that's what you're going to experience because of impermanence, that not everybody in the world is polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. So you're going to hear things that are sometimes degrading or disparaging. So if the mind is clinging to this physical body, thinking this is who you are, it's only a matter of time before you experience discontentedness due to all these different examples and others. Then there's what's called the self-identity. This is where the mind is clinging to the mind itself. It's holding on to the mind in a certain identity in the mind, certain culture, ethnicity, maybe your sexual orientation, maybe your job or your role in society. You might be clinging to this, thinking that this is who you are. And now, if the mind experiences change or impermanence related to this, now the mind gets shaken up. So for example, like I am Chinese, or I am American, or I am Irish, or I am a Brit, or I am Polish, or I am any of this I am about our nationality or our culture or our ethnicity, or I am a boyfriend, or I am a girlfriend, or I am a husband, or I am a wife. All of this different I am in the mind. I am a doctor. I am a lawyer. I am a Buddhist teacher. I am, I am, I am. If the mind is clinging to these things, thinking that this is who you are and you've adopted as your self-identity, when you hear things that are agreeable to you, you will experience pleasant feelings. But when you hear things disagreeable, you will get painful feelings. So if somebody says, all Americans are lovely and friendly and kind and so cheerful, okay, well, if you identify with I am American, now your mind might get these pleasant feelings. But it's only a matter of time before somebody says something degrading and disparaging about these things, whether it's your nationality, your culture, your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, any of these things. And you can't control what other people say. So you could be at a restaurant and maybe 2 tables over, somebody's disparaging some aspect of your identity that you're clinging to in your mind. And now you get angry or frustrated because you're identifying with that's who you are as a person. And what the Buddha is teaching you here is none of this is you. It's not who you are. If you've been in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend or husband and wife, and you've adopted that as your identity, that I am a husband or I am a wife or I am a boyfriend, I am a girlfriend, when the relationship was over and you were now single, your mind might have really struggled with that and felt like you wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship because you weren't comfortable, because you felt like a part of you was missing, like a part of yourself was gone. Or if you've ever worked in a particular job and you've identified with this job as who you are as a person, now when you're not working that job anymore, maybe you quit, maybe you got fired, maybe the company went out of business, maybe you retired, and now you're not performing that role anymore. Part of you might have felt like, wow, part of me is missing, or you might feel diminished or like you're not whole anymore because part of that identity that you're clinging to in your mind is no longer intact, that you're not a police officer anymore. You're not a lawyer. You're not a doctor. You're not a food server. You're not a taxi driver. You're not a construction worker anymore. Whatever it is that your mind identified with is that's who you are. If you stop doing those things for whatever reason, you might have really struggled. And same thing, like I mentioned with relationships, you might have really struggled and wanted to hurry up and get right back into another relationship. So this is what the mind's doing when it's polluted with personal existence view, is it's clinging to the body and it's clinging to the mind, thinking that this is who you are. There's a certain self-image, a certain self-identity that the mind's clinging to, and it wants this to be permanent, but it's not, it's impermanent. So as long as you allow your mind to cling to these things, you're going to experience discontentedness related to this personal existence view. So the universal truth of non-self is the Buddha explaining to you that there is no self. There's no you there. But the challenge is that the mind thinks that there is. We get this label at birth, like our name, like David, this name David that was given to me at birth. Maybe somebody adopts this as who you are, and now you have a certain identity or a certain image that you form around this name. And now you go out onto the world with this label, and now the mind's trying to live up to this image or this identity and feeling diminished or demoralized when you're not being perceived in the world the way that you want to be perceived. So you can liberate the mind and free the mind of all of this by eliminating the personal existence view and realizing that you aren't this body and you aren't this mind. This isn't who you are as a person. These things are constantly changing, and it's not going to be steady and fixed. So the mind's going to keep clinging to these things, wanting it to be permanent. But the Buddha is saying there is no self. There is no you there. Some people come to Thailand in search of themselves. They're trying to find their true self. Right? They might be on this journey, not only in Thailand, but other places around the world, trying to find their true self. But you're never going to find it because there isn't one. You might find new hobbies or new activities, new friends, new associates. You might find a new job, but none of that stuff is you. It's not who you are. But if the mind clings to it and thinks that it is you, then you're setting yourself up for this discontentedness. So this is a little bit on personal existence view and the universal truth of non-self. And there's training that you can do to eradicate this from the mind. You would need to know more than what I just shared with you. But now that you've learned a little bit about personal existence view and the universal truth of non-self, let's move into the reflection part so that you can start understanding this through your own reflection and your own direct experience. You might have already been starting to do that as I was explaining the symptoms of what you would experience if you have personal existence view. Some of these examples maybe ring home to you. Maybe you actually can see that, yes, these are some things that you've experienced in life. But now let's reflect on it in a way that you can verify that there is no self. So think about yourself when you were a child, when you were a teenager, when you were early adulthood, and then now. Think about yourself when you were in each of these stages of life: childhood, teenage years, early adulthood, and now. The way that you viewed yourself, has it been exactly the same throughout all those stages of life? Or have your views of yourself been constantly changing throughout this time? What would you say? They've been changing, right? The way that you perceive yourself, your character, your personality, these kinds of things have been constantly changing. So here you can see there's no permanent self, that has been constantly changing. Here's another way you can verify it. Point to yourself. Where are you? Where are you? Can you point? Show me. Where are you? Okay, people point here, right? Some people usually point here or here. I'm right here. This is me. Okay, well, what are you pointing to? You're pointing to a shirt. Is this shirt you? Is that who you are? If I took off the shirt and I hold it up, is that David? Is that what we're calling David, the shirt? Is that me? Is that you? No, that's not you, right? Okay, so throw away the shirt. Okay, so now where are you? Someone might point. What are we pointing to? We're pointing to skin. Okay, let's take the skin off. Hold up the skin. Is that you? Is that who you are? Are you the skin? That's not you, is it? Okay, so let's throw away the skin. Where are you? Point. Where are we? Where are you? Right? Someone might point. Okay, now you've got muscle tissue, you've got ribs, you've got organs, you've got fluid, you got other things in there. Is any of that stuff you? Is that who you are? The ribs, the organs, the muscle tissue, the fluid? None of that stuff is you. But the mind is falsely believing that it is. It's confused. It's having this misunderstanding. The mind thinks that that stuff is you, but it's not you. Here's another way that you can see it. Say your arm was amputated and you only had one hand and one arm. Are you less of a person? Shaking your head no. You're not less of a person. Are you less of a person if you only have one hand and one arm? No. People are shaking their head no, right? You're not less of a person. So intellectually, you understand that this body isn't you. You understand intellectually Because if this body was you, and you know that to be the truth, when I asked you that question, if you got your arm cut off, are you less of a person? You say, yeah, I'm less of a person because this body is me and now I'm less of a person. But you said, no, I'm not less of a person. So intellectually, when you're asked about it, you understand that this body isn't you. But with this confusion, with this misunderstanding in the mind has this misperception that this body is you. And that's the whole challenge in the unenlightened mind, is it doesn't have clarity. It doesn't have this deep penetrating wisdom to be able to see the truth clearly, that there is no self. And that's one of the things that a Buddha does, is they awake to this wisdom to then be able to share it with other people, that there is no self, there is no you there. But the challenge is that the unenlightened mind thinks that there is. It has this misperception, this confusion, this misunderstanding that there is a self here. So that's why if you hear something degrading or disparaging about your self-image or your self-identity, you'll get angry, you'll get frustrated, because the mind's confused in that situation, thinking that this is who you are. So slowly but surely, you train your mind to eliminate this pollution, and you'll reside more peaceful and more joyful. And that takes time. It's not something you can just snap your fingers and eliminate just through one conversation. Okay, so these are the three universal truths. Do you guys have any questions on any of these, any discussion that you would like to have related to any of these three universal truths? If you would like to ask a question, we have microphones here. If you could just turn it on, then the people online will be able to hear you. We have 2 microphones we can pass around. And for those of you guys online, you can ask questions through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Or in Zoom, you can raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. Any questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so what I'm going to do is move on to help you guys now start to understand the Four Noble Truths. But before we understand the Four Noble Truths, there's one more building block that you need to understand. This is called craving, desire, attachment. Wants, expectations, grasping, holding. This is clinging. This is where the mind is longing and yearning, chasing after the objects of its affection. It feels like the mind's pulling towards something. The unenlightened mind thinks that this next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So it chases after this thing. It thinks that it's going to provide you fulfillment. So you might chase after a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or you might chase after a new pair of shoes, or more money, or a brand new car. You chase, thinking that this thing's going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. The mind feels like it's being pulled towards this thing. Are you guys familiar with what I'm talking about here? I'll give you an example. If you've ever been in the mall, right, and you've been walking down the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes, and you're like, oh, a new pair of shoes. Yes, I got to have those. Yes. And you're just pulling towards that thing. Or maybe a new mobile phone, or a new computer, or a new video game, or some new thing that your mind is just pulling towards. And you think that if I just get this thing, everything in life will be perfect. If I just get that new job, if I can just get that job, oh my goodness, everything will be perfect in my life. That's the craving, desire, attachment. And there's lesser versions of that too. There's a spectrum here, but I usually describe it in the extreme so that you guys can understand it and see that you've experienced these things. Have you guys experienced this? Do you know what I'm talking about? Where the mind's pulling towards something, thinking something external is going to provide some kind of inner satisfaction. Okay, so this is a craving, desire, attachment, okay? So now I'm going to share with you the Four Noble Truths. And again, we're going to walk through this in a way that I can teach it and help you learn it. And then you can independently verify it. And then you can learn how to practice it so that you can now have this breakthrough to understanding what's causing these discontent feelings. In 4 statements, I'm going to help you see what is the problem in the unenlightened mind, the cause of the problem, the elimination, and the path forward. Because once you understand what the problem is, and you understand the cause of that problem, and you understand how to eliminate it, and you understand the path of how to do it, then you can gradually learn how to eliminate these discontent feelings, get into enlightenment where you no longer experience anger and sadness and all those other discontent feelings. So the first noble truth is explaining the problem, that Everyone that is unenlightened will experience discontentedness. That's those conditioned feelings, the pleasant feelings, painful feelings, neither painful nor pleasant. The mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. So the mind goes up and down, up and down. In the enlightened mental state, you're beyond this. As I mentioned, you're experiencing unconditioned happiness or unconditioned joy, where the mind is just always happy, always joyful, always peaceful, without any conditions. But what the problem is being experienced in the unenlightened state is it's experiencing these conditioned feelings that if this condition is met, this condition is met, this condition is met, then I will be happy. If my bank account is this, if my mom calls me, if my boss does this, if I get to go to Thailand, if my flight's on time, if it doesn't get delayed, I'll be happy. But if those conditions aren't met, then your mind might end up in these painful feelings. So this is the problem, the first noble truth. The second noble truth is explaining the cause of this problem. Discontentedness is caused by our own cravings, desires, attachments, because the mind wants everything to be permanent when everything in the world is impermanent. I'm going to explain that a few times, and I'm going to give you some examples to be able to understand it, and then I'll help you to independently reflect on it so that you can see the truth of what's causing these discontent feelings. The discontent feelings, those conditioned feelings, the pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant, are caused by the mind's craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affections, the wants, the expectations, the clinging, the grasping, the holding. Because the mind wants things to be permanent, but yet everything around you is impermanent. Okay, so let me give you some examples. Say you were in a relationship with a boyfriend or girlfriend, and when you guys first got together, you got all these pleasant feelings. Wow, this person's showing you affection. They're inviting you out to the movies. You're going out to dinner. You're having great conversations. They may be sending you text messages, calling you on the phone, checking in on you, see how you're doing, right? All these pleasant feelings. You might even have intimate contact at some point, right? All these pleasant feelings that are being experienced. But then over time, things are happening in this relationship and you guys break up for whatever reason, right? You break up. Now the mind's sad or angry or frustrated or feeling lonely or bored, because the mind's craving for this relationship to be permanent. It wanted this relationship to be permanent. It was expecting this relationship to be permanent. The unenlightened mind doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence. It wants this thing to be permanent. Even if you were together for the rest of your lives, this relationship was never permanent. But the mind was thinking that it was. It was craving. It was having this misunderstanding and this misperception. It was clinging to this person, wanting it to be permanent. But it was impermanent. It was always impermanent. Even if you guys were together for the rest of your lives, one of you would have most likely died first. Right? If your mind's clinging to this relationship and attached to it, holding on to it, wanting these things to be permanent, then you will struggle and have difficulties. You will experience the loneliness, the boredom, the anger, the sadness, and all those other discontent feelings. Let me give you another example. Say you bought a brand new car. You saved up your money. You got this brand new car. Maybe it's a red, shiny sports car with a convertible. I don't know. You guys figure it out. What's your favorite car, right? You got that favorite car, the car you've always been wanting. You drive off the parking lot of the dealership. You drive through your neighborhood. Your parents see your new car. Your friends, everybody's like, wow, they're so successful. Look at that new car. Wow, that's so amazing. But now you take it to the store, you park it, and you go inside, and you come out, and you see a scratch on your car. Oh, my goodness. Wow, now you're angry, you're frustrated, right? Why? It's not the person who scratched your car that caused this. It's not the scratch itself that's causing you to be frustrated or angry. It's your craving, it's your desire, it's your longing, your yearning, wanting this car to be permanent. But you live in an impermanent world. It's not possible for this car to be permanently beautiful. It's going to get a scratch at some point. But the mind doesn't understand the universal truth of impermanence in the unenlightened state. It doesn't understand the craving and desire. So the mind blames the person who scratched the car. Now, I'm not saying what's wise or unwise in this situation, because it would be wonderful if nobody ever scratched our car, right? That would be great. But that's not the world we live in. We live in an impermanent world. We live in a world that our tires are going to need to be changed. The oils are going to need to be changed. The window washers are going to need to be changed. The upholstery is going to fade away, right? This car is going to change. It can't stay beautiful and looking permanently brand new forever. That would be permanence. We don't live in that world. We live in an impermanent world. So if you're craving permanence in this situation, when you see that scratch, you're going to be discontent. Right? So this is what's causing the mind to be discontent, is the craving, the desire, the longing, the yearning. When grandma, grandpa passed away, or mom or dad or brothers or sisters or friends passed away, and you were grieving, it wasn't the love that was causing the grief. Oftentimes people think that it's love that's causing the grief and the sadness. Love is a genuine interest in seeing this person be well. That's not what's causing the sadness when people pass away. When grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, brothers, sisters, and friends are passing away, the mind's craving, it's attached, it's wanting this person to be permanent. The mind doesn't understand grandma is impermanent. She was born, so she had to die. Same thing with grandpa and brothers and sisters and moms and dad, they had to die. We all die for exactly the same reason. It's because we were born. Because we were born, we have to die. This is the impermanent nature of this physical body, that we all arise, we change, and we fade away. And if your mind's craving for that person to be permanent, you will grieve at the time of the death. And you're not a bad person. You haven't done anything wrong. That's not what these teachings are about. The Buddha is explaining to you why your mind experiences these things, so then you can eliminate it. Because if someone dies and you can maintain your gratitude, your appreciation, your respect, and really value the amount of time you spent with grandma and grandpa, you don't have to feel like somebody cut you off at the knees or someone pulled the carpet out from under your feet, which is oftentimes the way people feel when somebody dies close to you, because you might feel this grief or this sadness coming into the mind. But you can get to a point where when people die, you understand that this is impermanence, and your mind's not shaken up by it. The same thing is occurring at a wedding. If you've ever went to a wedding and you've grieved at a wedding, or you've cried or been sad, or the people around you have cried or been sad, it's not the love that's causing that. It's because the mind's holding on to brothers and sisters and cousins and friends, and now the family holding on to this person, wanting them to be permanent. When they go off into the world in a relationship, the mind is confronted with this impermanence, and the unenlightened mind doesn't understand impermanence, and because it's craving and wanting permanence, now when someone's going off into the world in a relationship, the mind struggles with that and has sadness or frustration or other discontent feelings. The same thing occurs if you ever were dropped off at college by your parents, or if you're a parent and you sent your kids away somewhere and you became sad when you sent them away to college, or if your parents became sad or you became sad when your parents dropped you off at college. This is the mind craving permanence. It's attached. It's thinking that this is permanent, when in reality, that's what occurs. We all come and go. We're all impermanent in each other's life. So you can independently verify this second noble truth now that you've done a little bit of learning, because what I'm sharing with you is that the mind is causing its own discontent feelings, the craving, the desire, the attachment, the longing, the yearning. The mind is causing it itself. This is part of what we call establishing right view, that you're establishing the right view that your mind is causing its own discontent feelings. Because when you have wrong view, when you think somebody else is causing your discontent feelings, when you think somebody else is causing your anger, when you experience those painful feelings, you'll push the people away out of your life and think that that solves the problem. This is called aversion, but it doesn't solve the problem, because you become irritable or grumpy or frustrated about something else. If this solved the problem, when you push that person out of your way, you'd be completely peaceful and joyful, because they're the problem. You push them out of the way and you'd be completely peaceful for the rest of your life. But this isn't what occurs. You push that person out of your life and you just become bitter and angry or harsh or upset or frustrated about something else, because that's not the true problem. Or you'll become bitter and harsh and hostile towards people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And now they might choose to leave out of your life because you were angry or bitter or hostile towards them. Or you might put your expectations on people, trying to control them to do things your way. Because the unenlightened mind is like, if I can just get these cravings fulfilled, if I can just get people to do things my way, everything would be perfect in the world. But the problem is that there's 8 billion people in the world. You've got to train 8 billion people to do things your way. This is a really big task. And I don't know if you've gotten to work on that, or you've been starting that, or you've been trying to convince people to do things your way. This is really a hard job. You're going to have a massive training program, and there's new people being born all the time. So why are you here? You should be out there doing that, right? No, that's not going to work, right? You're here in order to learn what the true problem is. So pushing people away, being bitter and harsh and hostile, or putting your expectations on people, that's not going to work. And it hasn't worked for you. That's why you still experience these discontent feelings. So the way that you independently verify this, that it's your own mind that's causing this, that that's the cravings, desires, attachments, is take a recent time where you've been angry, you've been frustrated, you've been irritated, you've been annoyed, or some other discontent feeling. At that time, you might have been trying to blame somebody else. That's what the unenlightened mind typically does, is it blames other people for your discontent feelings. And that's what you were doing then. But now you have more wisdom. Look at that same situation. What was it that your mind wanted that you didn't get? There was something that the mind was longing and yearning for, some expectation, some craving, desire, attachment. There was something that you wanted that you didn't get. And when you didn't get it, you got angry, you got frustrated, you got irritated. And again, you might have been blaming somebody else for that. So it might have been this morning, it might have been yesterday, it might have been last week. Can you look at that and see it through these fresh eyes? What was it that your mind wanted? And if you can't see it, let me know. Because I've had students share with me, they said, you know, David, I went to work the other day and I came home and my wife had this craft project all over the house. And I got so frustrated and angry when I came in. How did I cause this? I wasn't even there. She's the one who messed up the house. Well, when they went to work, the house looked a certain way. And when they left, they were craving for the house to look that way when they came back. They were wanting this permanence. They were craving for the house to look a certain way permanently. And when they walked in and it looked different, they experienced this impermanence. Their mind didn't like that. Their mind was frustrated and agitated. And just like the house can't permanently look that particular way, this craft project that wife had all over the house, that's impermanent too. She's going to put it away. And maybe you even help her put it away, right? So there's all this impermanence in life, but the unenlightened mind doesn't understand that. So do you guys see the truth? Can you see that your mind's causing this? Is there anybody who's not seeing it? Through your own example, through your own direct experience? Can you see that your mind's causing your own discontent feelings? Yeah? Yeah, you can see it. If you can't, let me know, right? That's what classes are about. This isn't a lecture or a sermon or anything like that. This is a discussion to help you and guide you to be able to see the truth. And if you can't see it, let me know, because students sometimes need help to be able to see it. Okay, so the second noble truth is helping you see that your mind is causing its own discontent feelings. It's the craving, it's the longing, it's the yearning. And continuing to push people away, being bitter and harsh and hostile, or putting your expectations on people hasn't worked, and it's not going to work, because that's not what the real problem is. So that's not a real solution. The third noble truth is explaining the solution. The solution to this problem is that if the cause of discontentedness is craving, desire, attachment, then the elimination of discontentedness is possible by eliminating the craving, desire, attachment. There's specific training that the Buddha provides you, a certain guidance that you can learn, you can reflect on to independently verify, and you can practice to be able to train the mind to eliminate all your cravings, desires, attachments. And as you eliminate these longing, yearning in the mind, you can now pursue things as a goal, as an objective, as an interest, which is the middle way. Whereas if you are craving and longing and yearning and chasing after things, you can only be happy if these things happen. And then when those things don't happen, you'll be angry or frustrated. But also, if you lived on the other side where you were indifferent and you didn't really care what was going on in your life, and you didn't make wise decisions, and you were indifferent to what's going on, you're not going to be joyful and peaceful there either. So it's coming to this middle way where you're pursuing things as a goal, objective, or interest. And this is where it takes training and it takes time for the mind to learn how to do this, because you don't know how to do this. You don't have the wisdom. This isn't what you've been doing throughout your life. The mind has been craving and longing, yearning, and making decisions based on those cravings. So there's certain training that you learn in order to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. The breathing mindfulness meditation that we did this morning, this is part of that training where you're training the mind to focus on the breath. And when it moves off the breath, you cut that off and let it go and bring the mind back to the breath. The goal of this meditation, it isn't to eliminate your thoughts. It isn't to, completely eliminate your thoughts. A lot of times people think that that's what it's for, but that's not what it's for. You're actually cultivating mindfulness or awareness of mind, so you can start being aware of the mind. You're developing concentration, being able to have focus. By focusing on the breath, you're developing the quality of concentration in the mind, and you're developing the ability to easily let go. So now in daily life, when you're out and about and you're in the mall, you have mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration, and you see the mind longing, yearning, and pulling towards those shoes. You think to yourself, hold on a second, I've got 30 pairs of shoes at home. How many pairs of shoes can I wear at one time? Do I really need that new pair of shoes? Because what the mind's going to do in the unenlightened state is it's going to chase your wants. It's going to want this and want this and want this and want this. It's going to keep chasing. And you need to have mindfulness in concentration. You need to have awareness of mind and concentration to be able to see these cravings and then to be able to cut them off and let them go, to restrain the mind and pull it back. So when you're in meditation, if your mind's focused on the breath and it moves off the breath, and you can notice that and then cut it off and let it go and bring the mind back to the breath, you gain this control or this discipline over the mind that you're able to then observe and notice the mind in daily life when it's longing and yearning, and then you can easily let that thing go. And eventually, you can get to the point where you're no longer chasing after things. You're no longer having craving, desire, attachment, and there won't be any anger or frustration arise. So in meditation, you're training the mind to cut off anything that arises. You're not trying to eliminate things. You're just trying to build that mindfulness, that awareness of mind, that concentration, and the ability to easily let things go. And you're cutting off anything that arises because you're trying to build this quality. You're exercising the mind. Just like you would exercise a muscle, you're exercising the mind. But then in daily life, you're only cutting off the unwholesome thoughts, the unwholesome things that arise. If you have a wholesome thought, like you'd like to take your friend out to lunch or call your mom and see how she's doing, go for it, right? That's wholesome. You're not causing any harm there. But if you see something unwholesome coming up in the mind, then you'd like to cut that off. And if you've trained your mind and exercised the mind this way in meditation, then you'll be able to do that. And that's why it's a consistent, ongoing training throughout your life, that you're consistently training the mind with meditation so that you build these qualities of mind that you can then use in daily life to now train your mind. So your training, yes, is in meditation, but you're also training your mind outside of meditation. Like I mentioned, you can't meditate your way to enlightenment. You need more than just meditation to be able to train your mind. But you also wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation either. So you need this meditation on a consistent, ongoing basis. In the unenlightened state, you might have gotten bombarded with thoughts when you were meditating. Or you might have had a thought and you indulged in that thought for a period of time before you realize, like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring the mind back. This is what the unenlightened mind does. You're going to have potentially random bombardment of thoughts. Or you might have an indulging in a thought where you follow that thought for a period of time before you realize, oh yeah, I'm meditating. Let me bring it back. In the enlightened state, you're still going to have thoughts during meditation, but they're going to be infrequent. You're going to have stilled the mind. You're going to have quieted the mind. And when you do have a thought, when the mind is enlightened, then you'll notice it right away and you'll be able to easily cut it off and let it go. So as I mentioned, your goal isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Your mind is to be noticing them sooner and sooner and being able to cut them off easier and easier. So if you get to the end of your meditation and you're like, oh my goodness, my mind is so busy. Hey, that's mindfulness. That's awareness of mind. You're not bad at meditation. You haven't done anything wrong. You're developing awareness of mind. So every single meditation is beneficial. Some people get caught up in judging their meditations. This was a good meditation. This was a bad meditation. This is going to diminish you. This is going to degrade your ability to stay focused and dedicated and diligent, because you might think you're bad at meditation when your mind is busy. But if you get to the end of your meditation, you're like, wow, my mind is so busy. That's good wisdom for you. That's good insight. Because now if you're about to make some impactful decisions that day, you might say, you know what? I'm going to delay this decision. I'm not going to make this decision today. My mind's too busy. I'm going to wait for another time. So all your meditation is beneficial. So meditation is one of the things that we do in order to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment, and there's also generosity as well, which I'm going to explain to you here in a moment. But now that you understand that in order to eliminate the discontent feelings, you need to practice the third noble truth, which is you need to eliminate the discontentedness through eliminating the cravings, desires, attachments. And there are certain practices that the Buddha taught, like meditation and generosity, to be able to train the mind to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. And then it's the fourth noble truth that is explaining the complete solution in the way forward. The fourth noble truth is explaining that the eightfold path is the path to eliminating discontentedness. That's the complete perfect plan. He's giving you 8 individual steps that you learn, you reflect on, and you practice. This is your life practice. This is what you train your mind through, is this eightfold path. And this is going to help you to understand how to now train your mind to eliminate your discontentedness. So this eightfold path, it's 8 individual steps. The way that I think about it is I think about it like 8 individual dials. If you were having a speaker system and you were interested in getting the best quality sound out of this speaker system, you would tune in these 8 dials closer and closer in order to get a better and better quality of sound coming out of these speakers. Well, the same thing is true about the mind. If you're interested in getting a really well-performing mind where you have concentration and focus and clarity and deep memory, and you're not experiencing these discontent feelings, and your relationships can really blossom, and you're not even in a bad mood, then you need to dial in these 8 steps closer and closer in your life. And you'll need to revisit this eightfold path multiple times using the original words of the Buddha. This eightfold path starts with right view. Right view is having the right view that your mind is causing its own discontent feelings. Understanding the Four Noble Truths and practicing the Four Noble Truths is right view. Wrong view would be to blame other people for your discontentedness. Because if you blame other people that they are the problem, then that means you need to train 8 billion people, right? And that's a lot of work. You need to just train one mind. If you have right view, your work just got significantly easier because you only need to train one mind. Do you know whose mind you need to train? Whose mind? Yeah. You need to train your own mind, right? You only need to train one instead of 8 billion. That's wonderful, right? It just saved you a whole bunch of work right there. So right view is to have the right view that it's craving, desire, attachment that's causing your own discontent feelings. Essentially accepting responsibility and accountability for the feelings that you experience in the mind, rather than blaming other people. So understanding and practicing the Four Noble Truths is right view. But then you'll need to learn all the other steps as well. It takes about 2.5 hours to teach that. So in various courses and retreats and programs and the books and the audiobooks, the podcasts, the videos, the different things that I share, I'm sharing this at different times in different ways. So you can learn this if you like. Whether you tune into a live stream, whether you download one of our free books, whether you watch a free video or what have you, you can learn this Eightfold Path if you like. It's organized into 3 individual steps. 3 individual categories, which is wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. I'm actually going to be teaching this tomorrow here at the temple for those of you guys that would like to learn this. It's part of a course called Harmony in Relationships. It's a 5-day course, and I'm going to be starting off teaching the Eightfold Path in its entirety using the original words of the Buddha. So you're welcome to attend that if you like. It starts at 9 o'clock. There's no cost for it. You can just come in. You don't even have to register. There is a place to register, but you don't have to. You can just show up if you like. So I'm going to be teaching each individual step, because as you learn each individual step and you dial this in, your mind starts performing more and more optimally, just like those speakers that you would dial in with the 8 individual dials. And the title of this chapter is called Craving is the Problem. What is the Solution? So here in this chapter, what I end up doing, because I introduce and teach the Four Noble Truths all the way back in chapter 4 of volume 1, and The Eightfold Path is in chapter 5. Here, what I do in this chapter, among other things, is I provide this table for you to see some of the potential cravings. And it's important for you to understand that the craving, desire, attachment, it's not the object itself. It's not the object that is the craving, desire, attachment. It's not the object of the automobiles or the children or the clothing or the jewelries or the fame or all these things that I have listed here. These aren't the cravings. These are the object. The craving is the mind longing and yearning for this thing. So, for example, let's take an example here like automobile. Someone could have an automobile and not be attached to it. Or you could have an automobile and be attached to it. It's not the automobile that is the problem. Remember, the cause of the problem is the craving, desire, attachment. That's the longing, the yearning, what's inside the mind. So when I got my very first automobile at the age of 17, I cleaned that car like 3 times a week. I was out there scrubbing and washing and vacuuming it. I wanted it to be shiny. I think I waxed it like every week or every month or something like this. I was really obsessed with this car. That was the craving, the desire, the attachment. It wasn't the car. It was the longing, the yearning for it, right? And this put a lot of financial burden, right? There was a lot of excessive work. There was a certain amount of ego involved in having this car and driving around with it all shiny. I had this awesome sound system. It was thumping. The trunk was actually vibrating. The music was so much deep bass in it, right? There was all this ego involved. There's a certain amount of time and effort and energy that I had to put into maintaining this car and keeping it that way. And there was a certain amount of pollution. Say, for example, if you had like 30 cars or 50 cars, right? And there's a lot of pollution that's involved in having all of that, right? So if you had an obsessive mind where you are craving, desiring, attached to this car, you can experience these potential harmful effects. But also you could own a car and not be attached to it. You can come to the middle where you just maintain the car and you know that it's providing you transportation. So if you're craving, you're desiring, you're attached to it, then there's going to be this obsessiveness with it. But also if you were indifferent and you didn't care less and you like let the car get run down, that wouldn't be wise either. So you're looking to come to this middle way where you practice maintaining this car and you're just not attached to it. Perhaps when you come outside and you see a scratch on the car, okay, well, you can maintain your calmness and your composure because you realize, like, okay, there's some impermanence, there's a scratch on the car. What should I do? Whereas if you get angry and frustrated, you might end up beating up the person. You might end up attacking somebody. You might go into the security guards at the store and start yelling and hollering and being bitter and hostile with them. You could make all these unwise decisions that lead to unwholesome results. But if you can maintain your calmness and composure in the situation, maybe you look for a note, see if somebody left a note. Maybe you go in and talk to the security guards, polite and kind and friendly, see if there's CCTV cameras. Or maybe you're like, you know what, I've got insurance. I'll take this to get it fixed. No big deal. What you choose to do in your life, it's your choice. It's your decisions. The Buddha's not going to tell you what to do, right? Cars didn't even exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. He's explaining to you the natural laws of existence of why your mind experiences these things. And then when you purify your mind, you'll come to a decision that is helpful and wise for you because you'll understand what leads to wholesome results. So the Buddhist teachings aren't a decision tree that says, if this happens, do that. And if this happens, do that. Instead, he's teaching you what's polluting your mind and how to actually eliminate that pollution so that then when you eliminate the pollution, you'll figure out the wise decision because each situation, there's unique variables. It's a unique situation every single time. Moving to a higher consciousness means that you bring in the information and you bring in the variables of the situation that you're encountering, and then you use your wisdom to figure out what would be a wise decision in this situation. And you can have 2 enlightened beings that are experiencing exactly the same situation, and they could come to a different solution, a different decision. This isn't about everybody doing things exactly the same way. That would be permanence, right? We understand the universal truth of impermanence. So moving to a higher consciousness and awakening to the wisdom to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state, it isn't everybody following a set of rules. It's training your own mind to eliminate pollution and then taking in the variables of any given situation and coming to an actual solution, a wise decision that's going to produce wholesome results. So each one of these things in the table that you can find in the book, these can be potential cravings, but they don't have to be cravings, right? Things like children or jewelry, things like this. There's some others on here as well. I've got two actual charts because I had to separate it. In the book, it's all one. These are all individual things that can be potential cravings, and then the harmful effects if your mind is craving for these things. But there's the possibility for these things in some cases that your mind can gradually work towards this, right? So like, let's take one like wealth, right? Like you're going to need some amount of money in order to sustain your life, in order to purchase the things that you need, in order to have food and clothing and shelter and medical care and things like this. But if you were chasing after money and thinking that money is going to provide you happiness, and you just kept chasing it and chasing it and chasing it, it's never going to be enough. If you're at a job and you're making $30,000 or $50,000 a year, you'll be happy for a period of time if you're chasing after money, but eventually you're going to want more. You're going to want more and more and more. And then you get 60, you get 80, you get 100,000, and you want more and you want more and you want more. You'll be happy for a period of time when you get your raise, but then after a few months, that'll wear off. Right? And then you just want more and more and more. That's what craving, desire, attachment does, that the mind just chases after these things. But also, if you were over here and you were indifferent about your career and you could care less about whether you had money, whether you had food, whether you had clothing, that wouldn't be ideal either. You wouldn't be applying time and effort and energy to build your career. That's two opposite sides of the spectrum. You would like to come to the middle where you gradually pursue more and more skills, more abilities, find a way to sustain yourself in the world without causing harm to others. And the Buddha provides you guidance of how to figure that out, but you need to figure it out for yourself and then gradually work towards that goal. So all of these things are potential cravings, but it doesn't mean they have to be cravings. You can train your mind to pursue these things as a goal, as an objective, or an interest. And the way that you do that is getting to the solution. So craving is the problem, the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning. The solution is practicing breathing mindfulness meditation, because there you're eliminating craving, desire, attachment. What a meditation is it's a dedicated, active, purposeful training session where you're either eliminating certain unwholesome qualities or you're arising certain wholesome qualities. And you're doing this in the seated, lying, standing, or walking position. So you're eliminating the craving, desire, attachment, training the mind to be able to restrain it. And you're cultivating the wholesome qualities of mindfulness or awareness of mind and concentration, being able to focus on a fixed object. So you would like to build this practice up to about 2 or 3 times per day for 30 minutes or more. And that's probably not where you're at right now, and that's okay. But gradually, slowly but surely over time, maybe 6 months, a year, 2 years, you gradually build up to 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. There's probably certain things in your life right now that you're doing, that you're filling your life up with, that are unbeneficial. And if you start clearing some of those things out, you'll find that you'll actually have time to study the teachings and do things like practicing meditation. But you need to do that gradually. So if you start with meditation and you're just doing one meditation for 10 minutes per session, okay, then that's where you're at. And that's what you do. That's where you start. I know when I started, I could only do maybe like 1 or 2 minutes when I first started. My mind was so bombarded with thoughts. So you start wherever you start. What you'll notice is frequency is more important than duration. So if it was a matter of one meditation session for 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes a session, or 2 for 15, go for the 2 for 15. You'll notice that this will actually be more beneficial. So maybe in the morning and in the evening, you do some meditation in the way that I share with you. And you can come here and you can learn, or you can learn online if you like. You can learn how to do this meditation and gradually and slowly implement it into your life and expand it more and more. So you'll need the meditation. Then you also need to practice generosity to train the mind to let go. Generosity is the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation without any expectation of anything in return. You're sharing your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources. Because when there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind will oftentimes become selfish. You'll hold on to things very tightly. My clothes, my phone, my computer, my money, my time, this, mine, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my mom, my dad, right? Mine. So you like to practice generosity where you're giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources with people around you so that you're not always wanting something from other people. You can do things like when you're walking into a store and you see someone behind you, and you can open the door and you can hold it. This is generosity. You're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources more than is strictly required without any expectation of anything in return. If you stand there holding the door expecting them to say thank you and they don't say thank you, you'll get irritated. You'll get frustrated, right? That's the craving, desire, attachment showing you that you're longing and yearning, you're wanting something. So if you're going to practice generosity, it has to be with no expectation of anything in return. Know that you're enhancing your own mind. You might buy your friend lunch. You might buy your mom dinner. You might offer your help at an orphanage. You might donate blood. You might do any number of things like this where you can offer your time, effort, energy, and resources more than is strictly required without any expectation of anything in return. You'll need this practice on a consistent, ongoing basis throughout your days, throughout your weeks, and throughout your months to train your mind to let go so you're not holding on to things very tightly. So between breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, these are two consistent ongoing practices that you'll need to do in order to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. Next week, I'm going to be teaching identifying cravings, cultivating non-craving and analysis of the mind. This is chapter 13 in the very first volume of the book series. And what I'm going to be sharing with you is how to identify your individual cravings, because this chart that I gave you here in chapter 12 are potential cravings, but your mind has your own unique cravings, your own unique desires, your own unique attachments. So I'm going to teach you how to identify them. And then once you identify them, I'm going to teach you how to put together almost like a surgical plan to go in and actively eliminate these attachments. Because the meditation and generosity that you're practicing on an ongoing basis, this is like generalized training for the mind. You're generally training the mind in the direction of eliminating craving, desire, attachment. And you'd like to get that on board and being consistent and ongoing in your life. But then you can actually identify specific cravings, desires, attachments that you have, and you can put together a certain plan that will go in and almost surgically remove some of these cravings, desires, attachments. And when I teach this to you, and then I use examples from my own life to show you how to eliminate these attachments, then you'll know how to do it for your own life. And then where you need help, you can ask for personal guidance and I will help you. Whether you're here at the temple or you're online, you can schedule appointments with me, and then I can teach you on a one-on-one basis if you're needing that help. You can always ask questions in classes. You can post questions in our Facebook group. You can send me a private message, or you can schedule personal guidance to sit down and talk one-on-one to learn how to go in and surgically remove these cravings, desires, attachments. But you would like to build up your eightfold path and developing your meditation practice and some of these other things, and have that going first. And then now that we're in chapter 12 and 13, I can now go in and help you to understand this, because this group learning program, it's a 7-month program. And I realize some of you guys, this is your first time coming here, and that's fine. But there's other students who have been learning for multiple months. And now if they've built up their eightfold path, now it's time to start learning how to go in and surgically remove your cravings, desires, attachments. And if this is your first time coming here and you're coming into the group learning program in the middle like this, it's okay. Students can start at any point, and you can start from this point and you can continue forward. And we repeat this program every 7 months, and we teach it here at the temple, and we teach it online as well. So as you guys travel, you can actually tune in either at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. Thai time. No matter where you are in the world, you should be able to attend a live class. But there's going to be certain situations because of impermanence that you're not going to be able to attend a live class. So all these classes are recorded, and you can actually watch them on Monday or Tuesday or some other day that is more convenient for you. So maybe some classes you come to live, other classes maybe you need to watch the recording on. And then you get personal guidance, you're reading the book slowly, and you can gradually build up to developing your life practice and eliminating your cravings, desires, attachments, and eliminating the discontentedness. So do you guys have any questions on anything that I've shared here today? Yes, sir. If you could just use a mic here, then the people online can hear you. You can take it back to your seat too, if you be comfortable. Go ahead.
Pressing the right button.
Yep, it's working.
The question that I'm finding this immensely wonderful. The question I have is I am relating to all of it and then my mind keeps going back to an exception. Say Hamas, where there's extreme violence. And to me, there are cases in time where getting away from avoidance of violence or, hostility or an angry person, that is peaceful, to eliminate that part of your life I don't know how you could be, say, maybe over in Israel with Hamas currently trying to do everything they can to inflict harm. So is that an exception, or how does that play into it? I admit that that's more the extreme.
So what you're learning here are the natural laws of existence, and they apply in all situations. So let's use that example that you just shared, and I will help you to see what is being experienced. So there's the ability for another person to cause you harm. Someone can cause you harm, for example, but they can't cause you to be discontent. So for example, if somebody stole your car, they're causing you harm, right? Because this car, you worked really hard for it. You saved up a certain amount of money. Now this car is something you use to take you back and forth to work. Maybe you go to the store to get food to sustain your life. Maybe if you have children, you take your children to school or what have you. This car is providing some benefit to you that you had to work for, and now you don't have that resource available to you. So someone can steal that car from you, and they've now caused you harm. But in that situation where your mind's becoming discontent, that is being caused by the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the holding on. So now in that situation, an individual needs to make decisions to get the car back or find transportation some other way. This car is impermanent in one's life. So this individual has caused you harm, but there's a whole bunch of decisions that an individual can make that can provide you the best opportunity to not experience those kinds of things. So this eightfold path, while there's a certain amount of wisdom and mental discipline that you need to learn in order to train your mind, there's also decisions about our moral conduct and what we decide to do in the world through our moral conduct that produces certain results for us. That when we have certain intentions, speech, and actions and livelihood where we're causing harm to others, harm then comes back to us. Everything we experience is a result of our decisions. So if we chose to park our car in a place that would be unwise, or say we didn't lock our door, or we live in an area that has a lot of crime, these are all decisions that we've made that were potentially unwise, and now our car has the ability to more easily be stolen. So each thing that we experience is a result of our decisions. So living in Israel, for example, while it's very unfortunate that this war is occurring, this is a result of cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, or action and result, action and result. And now, if you're living in that location, you're potentially going to be experiencing the struggles and difficulties of a war occurring. And an individual can make a decision, if they have the ability, to now leave that environment if they choose. And some people have chosen to do that, and some people aren't. Some people don't have the ability to choose to leave. But this is a result of one's decision of choosing to live in a certain location. Then you're going to experience certain results from living in that location. And that's why we each get to choose where are we going to reside in the world. We can choose for ourselves. And then, of course, some people, they don't have the resources or the ability to travel. And this is also a result of one's own decisions based on where we're born, based on the amount of skills or abilities we might have, based on our capability of our mind to get a job and resources and things like this. So when we understand that each thing we experience is a result of our decisions, then we can take control of our life, gain wisdom, make wise decisions, and produce wholesome results. And that starts with understanding that any discontentedness one experiences is a result of this craving, desire, attachment. So in a war zone, for example, an individual, if they're having fear or anger or sadness, this is because the mind's craving, their mind's clinging, it's holding on to something. Maybe they just really want to live in this one particular place and their mind's not willing to let go. And now, since they're holding on to this one particular place and wanting to live in this place, now when the bombs are coming in or experiencing the war, now the mind is experiencing this fear, and there's multiple layers of things that are occurring there, but it's still the same teachings at the core. It's this craving, desire, attachment that is causing these discontent feelings to arise. But people can cause harm. That is, like if somebody beat you up, or if they murdered you or a family member, they are causing harm in the situation. But say you have a family member that got murdered. Okay, that person is causing harm, but your mind experiencing sadness or grief or anger, it's because the mind's holding on to this individual, wanting them to be permanent. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. If you guys can keep these mics if you like and pass them around. I'm not sure how many questions you guys will end up having. It's still on, actually. Yeah, you can just talk. Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, I think it's really fine, all the things you are talking about, and I also been practicing and find that this is actually what's going on in our mind. And but one question is, this enlightenment, isn't it actually a fact that when we are humans that it's just very difficult to reach enlightenment? We can all develop more wisdom, all develop our mind, but actually to reach enlightenment, is it possible for people? Is it only the Dalai Lama, or sort of is it in moments you experience enlightenment, sort of in glimpse in your life, just small moments?
Yeah, so every single person has the ability to get to enlightenment. There's nothing that would hinder you from getting to enlightenment other than your own lack of diligence or determination or effort that you might put in. So you can train your mind to get to enlightenment. It's not easy, but it's not difficult either. It's been made more difficult over the years. The Buddha lived over 2,500 years ago, and during his life and right after his death, the teachings that were very strong and very vibrant in the world, because a Buddha is going to bring forth a lot of wisdom of how to get to enlightenment. And over 2,500 years, because of impermanence, people have changed his teachings over the years. And now, because this impermanence has affected the teachings, there's a lot of people in the world that don't understand how to get to the enlightened mind. But if you go back to his original source teachings with a collection of resources like what I share, you can see what his original teachings are. And through learning, reflecting, and practicing with the guidance of a teacher, now you can actually experience enlightenment. There's a lot of people out there that are trying to get to enlightenment on their own without the guidance of a teacher. And they don't understand that they're not able to do that. Only a Buddha is able to actually get to enlightenment without the help of any teachers or any guides. It's one of the criteria that makes a Buddha a Buddha. So you, from your household life or whatever life that you're living, if you choose to gradually learn and gradually practice using the original teachings of the Buddha with guidance from a teacher, you can gradually work towards training your mind and getting to enlightenment. It's possible that you can do it in this life. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to, other than your own lack of dedication or determination or diligence in applying effort to learn and practice the teachings.
But even the monks who has dedicated life to maybe be enlightened, is it possible for them? Because sometimes I think it's better to have a goal that is reachable than, and instead of having a goal that is sort of maybe you need several lifetimes to reach the goal, then you can be a bit.
Well, you've already experienced multiple lifetimes before this. So you've already had many lifetimes. And a lot of the ordained practitioners, a lot of the temples, they're not practicing the original teachings of the Buddha. I've visited over 200 temples in my life, and I've only been to one that actually shares the original teachings of the Buddha. That's less than 1%. So the average ordained practitioner, the average temple, they're not actually studying with the original teachings of the Buddha. You would think that they would. If it's a temple, if it's an ordained practitioner, surely they must know the teachings of the Buddha, right? Well, that would be permanence if every single temple and every single monk was studying with the original teachings of the Buddha. The original teachings of the Buddha are in 45 volumes of books that are this thick, about, what is that, about 5 inches, maybe 12, 15 centimeters. They're in 45 volumes of books. And here in Thailand, it would cost about $1,000 to print it out. And that's about 3 months of salary for the average Thai person. And you probably don't own a collection of books that's 3 months of your salary. So the average Thai person, even the average temple, doesn't even have the original teachings of the Buddha at their temple for monks to be able to learn and practice and be able to understand and then share with people. That's why you see most of these temples are empty, because the ordained practitioners aren't necessarily learning and then sharing those teachings with others so that then the people can actually learn. So one of the things that I do is I share these books and I share lots of resources that are the original teachings of the Buddha, and I give them away for free. So you can download these books for free. You can take them and go print them, or if you'd like printed versions, you can just reimburse us for the printing cost, or you can order them on Amazon and you can get the original words of the Buddha so that you can see what he actually taught. Where the average monk, the average temple, they're not learning the original teachings. They might be doing rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship, and this isn't what the Buddha actually taught. There isn't any rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship in his teachings, but most of the places that you go to that are considering what they do as Buddhism, they're practicing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. And as soon as you start doing these things, it's going to hinder you from being able to experience enlightenment, because the real challenge that's in the unenlightened mind is what we refer to as ignorance or unknowing of true reality, this confusion, this lack of wisdom. And when you bring in rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, this is actually taking the mind in the opposite direction of enlightenment. So most of the temples that I've ever visited, they will have these rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, which is exactly the opposite of what the Buddha taught. So people over 2,500 years have made it more difficult and more challenging. And even in the ordained lifestyle, these individuals aren't typically learning the original teachings. So depending on where you've learned and what you've learned, you might not have been studying the original teachings of the Buddha. And one of the things you were mentioning there is to not set your goal so high for enlightenment and set it on something that you think is more realistic. Right now, you think that enlightenment is difficult because you just don't know how to get to enlightenment. You don't have the wisdom, you don't have the resources, you don't have the guidance. But if you have a guidance, if you have the resources, then you won't see it as so difficult. But right now, you probably do see it as difficult. And the way that I encourage students who study with me is to not set their goals low, but to set their goal to enlightenment. And there's no reason why you can't get to enlightenment in this lifetime. And then for some reason, if you fall short of that, okay, maybe you're in the first, second, or third stage of enlightenment rather than the fourth stage, which is where the mind is actually enlightened. So I encourage people to focus and set their goal on enlightenment, the fourth stage. And then if they fall short, maybe they're in the first, second, or third stage. Whereas if you set your goal on the first stage of enlightenment and you fall short of that, you're going to be way short of that. And in my opinion, that would be kind of like a diminishing view, or, take you in a direction that would, you'd be compromising for less improvement in this life. I would rather encourage you to set your goal for enlightenment and then help you to get to that. Because I have full confidence that anybody who has dedication and diligence to learn, I can guide them to this mental state, but each person has to decide for themselves that that's what they're interested in doing.
Okay, can I have a small question more then?
Sure, you can ask any question you like.
Okay, thank you.
And you're welcome to have a seat too.
Have you ever met any people who are enlightened, and can you identify a person that has reached enlightenment?
Yes.
When you meet one?
Yes.
If you had one. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
You may actually be meeting somebody who's enlightened and you might not know it. because it sounds like you don't know how to identify if someone's enlightened. Would you like to know how to identify if someone's enlightened?
Yes.
Okay. So the way that you can identify if someone is enlightened is that their mind's going to be focused. It's going to be concentrated. It's going to be clear. They're going to have deep memory. They're going to have profound wisdom about the teachings that lead to enlightenment. They're going to be able to explain to you what enlightenment is. They'll never experience any anger or sadness or frustration or irritation or annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy. They're going to be joyful and cheerful. They're going to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful. They're going to have loving kindness or goodwill. They're going to have compassion, which is concern for the misfortune of others. They're going to have equanimity, which is like calmness and composure. They're going to be humble. They're not going to have arrogance and boastfulness. One of the ways to know that somebody isn't enlightened is that they will tell you that they are enlightened. So if somebody tells you that they are enlightened, right away you know that they're not. So you can ask a person questions like, do you experience sadness? Or is it possible to eliminate sadness and frustration, all those discontent feelings? And if they say, no, it's not possible to eliminate those things, then you know that they're not enlightened. But if they say, yes, you can eliminate those things. Or you can ask them, is it possible to eliminate the ego? And if they say, no, it's not possible, that means they still have ego. So they're not enlightened. So if somebody says, yes, it's possible to eliminate the ego, and here's how you do it, right? This person knows how to do it and how to accomplish it. So asking somebody the question of what is enlightenment, they should be able to explain it in detail and how to actually attain it if they have actually attained enlightenment. So these are a few of the questions that you can ask. And in chapter 3 of the first book, I've put 8 different questions that you could ask somebody to determine if they're enlightened or not. And the only reason why you would be interested in asking somebody these types of questions is if you are interested in potentially learning with them. So the goal isn't to go around and just figure out who's enlightened and who's not. Your goal is for you to get to enlightenment yourself. But if you're going to learn with a teacher, you would like to have some confidence that this person is either enlightened or close to it. So asking them these 8 questions will help you to figure out whether this person is potentially enlightened or not. So you might ask a potential teacher, how much does it cost to get to enlightenment? And if they're like, well, we have this 1-year plan that's $10,000 and this 3-month plan that is $20,000, right away you know that they're not enlightened, because an enlightened teacher isn't going to have a menu of options like this and charge their students to be able to get to enlightenment. Or you can ask a teacher, what are the types of students you accept and what are the type of students you reject? Well, if they say, I reject these kinds of students, right away you know that they're not enlightened, because an enlightened being would have loving kindness and compassion for all beings, and they would accept everybody and anybody as a student to learn and practice to get to enlightenment. So these are some of the things that I documented in the book to be able to help people to learn, because I know not everybody's going to be able to learn with me during this life, and the resources that I'm sharing are going to be here long after I'm dead, and then people can figure out how to determine, who to study with that would either be enlightened or very close to it.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you're welcome. Pleased to help you. Wonderful questions. Any other questions you guys have? I'm just going to check online here and see if we have any questions. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions here online. So what I'll do then is just end our class by thanking all of you for joining. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest to learn and practice the teachings. I really admire people who have dedication to learn and practice the teachings, because as you're learning and practicing the teachings, it's helping you to become a more peaceful and more joyful individual. It's helping those people around you, because you're causing less and less harm to the people around you. And it's helping all of humanity become a more peaceful, more loving, more kind and gentler society as more and more people choose to get to enlightenment. So I always admire people and have dedication and diligence to learn and practice, because while it's not easy, easy. It's also not difficult either. So learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha will ensure that your life is not tough, because life can be a real struggle in situations where you lack wisdom and you're really struggling in certain parts of your life. So you're welcome to continue to learn here either this week as I have courses, or on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday. You're invited to come and learn. You're invited to learn here at the temple or online. So thank you all for coming to join, and thank you for asking questions and being interested to learn the teachings of the Buddha. Perhaps we'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.